She left the note on the kitchen counter, folded once, with my name written on the outside in her handwriting, the looped capital J she'd never quite managed to make look casual. I almost didn't open it. I told myself it was probably a forwarding address, maybe a reminder about the shared streaming account, the kind of small administrative ending that people write when they want to leave cleanly. I opened it anyway. The first 4 lines were exactly that: utility, instructions, the name of her dentist in case mail came. Then I reached the last line, and I stood there in our kitchen, her kitchen now, I supposed, for a very long time. My name is Joel Carr. I'm 34. I work in logistics coordination for a mid-size freight company, which means I spend a meaningful portion of my professional life sending emails that say please see previous email. I lived, in a 2-bedroom apartment in a building that smelled faintly of someone else's cooking at all hours, which I had always found more comforting than I would ever admit out loud. I have poor survival instincts around women who argue with me like they mean it. Her name was Claire Navarro. We had been roommates for 3 years, 1 month shy of 3 years exactly, which I know because the lease anniversary was in April and she left in March. She was 32 and worked in medical billing, which she described, without any apparent irony, as sorting out other people's disasters. She had 1 shelf in the bathroom, and it had, at last count, 17 items on it, all of which she maintained were strictly necessary. She drank her coffee black and too hot, which she said was not a personality trait, but which absolutely was. She had a scratched metal water bottle that looked like it had survived at least 2 relocations and 1 minor flood, and she carried it everywhere, to work, to the grocery store, to the laundromat down the street where we had spent several unremarkable Saturday afternoons folding things and talking about nothing in particular. We were not together. We had never been together. We had simply lived in parallel for nearly 3 years, sharing a refrigerator and a Wi-Fi password, and the particular intimacy of knowing exactly when the other person was in a bad mood before they said a word. She had found a new place in February. A 1-bedroom in a quieter neighborhood, closer to her sister. It made sense. She had been talking about it for months. The commute, the noise, the way the radiator clicked at 2 a.m., like it was sending Morse code to nobody. I had helped her carry boxes. I had pretended this was a completely normal thing to do. I had done an excellent job of that. She left on a Wednesday morning while I was at work. When I came home, her room was empty. Her shelf in the bathroom was clear, and the note was on the counter. It was a Friday in mid-February when it started, or rather when I started noticing that it had always been there. Claire had a friend from university visiting, someone called Priya, who laughed loudly and immediately asked where we kept the wine, which I respected, and the apartment had been louder than usual, warmer, fuller in a way it sometimes wasn't. I had come home at 7 to find the 2 of them on the couch in the living room, Claire with her legs tucked under her and the metal water bottle on the coffee table, Priya with a glass of something red and an expression of deep satisfaction. "There he is," Priya said, like I was a story she had already heard the ending of. Claire didn't look up right away. When she did, she looked at me for just a second longer than usual, and then she looked away. I told myself it was the light. The lamp in the living room had always made everything look slightly warmer than it was. I went to my room to change. I stood in my room for 3 minutes longer than it takes to change clothes. When I came back out, Priya had poured a second glass and set it on the counter near me, and Claire was watching from the couch with an expression I didn't have a name for. Something settled and careful, like a person sitting very still because they've realized the ground is slightly less stable than it looks. "Priya tells me you're very organized," I said. Priya lies, Claire said. But not about that. Priya laughed and looked between us like someone watching a tennis match they had already bet on. I stayed for the glass of wine. I told myself it was only polite. The evening went long in the way evenings do when nobody is making an effort to end them. Priya talked about her work in architecture, about a project in Edinburgh that was either going brilliantly or catastrophically depending on the week. Claire talked about a billing error she'd spent 3 days untangling. I talked about the freight dispatcher who had, for reasons I still don't fully understand, been sending me inspirational quotes at 6 a.m. every weekday for 2 months. "Have you told him to stop?" Claire asked. "I have poor survival instincts," I said. "I keep thinking the next one will be good." She laughed at that. Not politely, actually, the kind of laugh that's short and surprised and escapes before the person decides to let it. I filed that away. I did not examine why I was filing it away. Priya left at 11 and said, on her way out the door, this was even better than she described. She said it to me. Then she smiled at Claire, who had gone very still in the way she did when she was not going to acknowledge something. The apartment was quiet after that. "How long have you known Priya?" I asked. "Since second year," Claire said. She was looking at the coffee table. "She means well. She seems to," I said. Neither of us said anything else for a while. Then Claire picked up her water bottle, said goodnight, and went to her room. I sat on the couch for a while after that. I was blaming the lamp for several things. The next 2 weeks were ordinary. We had coffee in the mornings at slightly different times. We passed each other in the hallway. We exchanged information about a noise complaint on the 3rd floor and a broken hinge on the kitchen cabinet, and the fact that someone in the building kept leaving their bicycle in the stairwell, a situation we both considered vaguely unreasonable. Everything was exactly as it had always been, except that I noticed, now, when she laughed in the wrong key. It happened when she was on the phone with her sister. I wasn't trying to overhear. The walls in that apartment were opinionated about privacy, and I heard her say something that made her sister apparently say something back. And then Claire laughed once, and it was the kind of laugh that doesn't match what it's responding to. A shade off. Like someone playing a note that isn't quite right and hoping nobody tracks it. I noticed, too, that she had put a new sticker on her water bottle. A small orange one, slightly askew, in the shape of nothing recognizable. I don't know why I noticed it. I noticed it. I noticed that she had started making coffee slightly later on mornings when I was home, and slightly earlier on mornings when I left for the office. I was not sure what to do with this information. I put it in the same internal filing cabinet as everything else and locked it carefully. I had good filing instincts, at least. On a Tuesday evening, about a week before she told me she had signed the new lease, she came out of her room while I was eating at the kitchen table, and she stopped in the doorway for a moment. Just a moment, like she had thought of something and then thought better of it. "Did you need something?" I asked. "No," she said. "Then, how was your day?" She didn't usually ask, not in the evenings. We had a morning vocabulary, a shorthand that lived in the kitchen between 7 and 8 a.m. But the evenings were usually each of us retreating to our own gravity. "The inspector in Bristol found a mislabeled shipment," I said. "It took 5 hours and 1 abandoned spreadsheet to sort out." She came and sat down at the other end of the table. She brought her water bottle. She set it down, slightly too hard, the way she did sometimes when something was sitting close to the surface, and she looked at me with an expression I almost recognized. "I signed the lease today," she said, "for the new place." I set my fork down. I am not sure why I set my fork down. Right, I said. That's good. Closer to Mara, right? Yeah, she was looking at the table. I told you in January it was likely. You did, I said. So, she picked up the water bottle and turned it once in her hands. So, it's sorted. Something in the room changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. When? I said. March, she said. The 15th. I nodded. I was doing an excellent job of appearing like a man who had no particular feelings about this. I believed I was convincing approximately nobody. She looked at me then. A real look. The held kind. The kind that lasts 1 second longer than feels safe. And then she said, I'll give you plenty of notice for the new tenant search. Thank you, I said. She said good night. She went to her room. I sat at the kitchen table with the remains of my dinner and an entirely unreasonable awareness of exactly how quiet the apartment had become. She left on the 15th. I came home at 6:30 to the empty room and the clear bathroom shelf and the folded note with my name on it. I read it at the kitchen counter, still in my coat. The first 4 paragraphs were practical. She had forwarded her post. She had Venmo'd me her share of the March utilities. The dentist was called Hamid, and the practice was on the high street. If I needed the spare key returned, she could drop it off. And then the last line. It was 6 words. I stood there for a long time. Then I put the note in my pocket, went to my room, and sat on the edge of my bed with my coat still on. The 6 words were, I should have said something. She had not signed it. She hadn't needed to. I reread it twice. It was not ambiguous. It was the most unambiguous sentence I had encountered in 3 years of living 2 rooms apart from a woman I had spent 3 years being very careful about. She had looked at the table when she told me she had signed the lease. She had set her water bottle down too hard. She had laughed in the wrong key when her sisters said something about me that I had filed away without examining. Priya had said this was even better than she described, and Claire had gone still in the way she did when she was not going to acknowledge something. I had excellent filing instincts. I had terrible opening instincts. I took my phone out. I held it for a while. This was not a recommended life choice. I made it anyway. I called her. It rang twice. She answered on the 3rd. Joel? Her voice was careful. The kind of careful that takes effort. Your note, I said. There was a silence. Not empty, the kind that's full of something that hasn't decided whether to come out yet. I almost didn't put that last line in, she said. What changed your mind? Another silence. Then, I was tired of not saying it. I thought if I was leaving anyway, if I had already left, then it would be lower stakes. Is it? She laughed once. Wrong key. No, she said. It really isn't. I was sitting on the edge of my bed with my coat on and my hand on my knee and the note in my pocket. I said, you can take that back if you want. You can tell me it means something simple, and I'll believe you. She was quiet. I heard her shift. The sound of something soft. The couch in her new place, maybe. I didn't know what her new place looked like. I had not been there yet. I don't want to take it back, she said. Her voice was low now. The quiet that carries more weight than volume. I just didn't think you. I didn't know if you, Claire. Joel, I have been sitting at that kitchen table once a week for 3 years watching you make coffee and argue with me about the bicycle in the stairwell, I said. I have excellent filing instincts and terrible opening instincts. I should have said something first. The silence this time was different, softer, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. The sticker on your water bottle, I said. The orange one. What about it? When did you put it on? A pause. Then, after Priya's visit, something in my chest shifted, not dramatically, just enough. "I'm getting in my car," I said. "You don't know my address. Send it to me." She did. It came through in under 10 seconds. I got in my car. I drove 20 minutes across the city to a building I had never seen. And she was standing outside the front door when I arrived, her coat over her arm and her scratched metal water bottle in her hand, and she looked like a woman who had just decided something and was not going to unsay it. I got out of the car. I walked toward her. I stopped close enough that I could see the orange sticker was slightly askew, which I knew, which I had noticed for 3 weeks. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. She looked at me the way she had at the kitchen table, the held look way, except this time neither of us looked away. "I should have said something," she said again. Out loud, not in a note. "You did," I said. And then I reached out, carefully, the way you reach for something you've been being careful about for a long time, and I held her hand. She let me. We stood on the pavement outside her building while the city did what cities do at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, and she laughed once. Finally, the right key, and her fingers tightened around mine, and I understood that I had been filing things very diligently into a cabinet I was never going to open, and she had slipped a note under the door. Her phone went off. Her sister. She answered it with, "Mara, I'm going to need 5 minutes." And Mara apparently said something that made Claire close her eyes briefly and say, "I know you knew." Everyone apparently knew. "Goodbye, Mara," she hung up. She looked at me. "Mara says she's been expecting this call for 2 years. How do you feel about that?" "I feel," she said, "like I should have said something sooner." I did not argue with her. Months later, we were in her apartment, our apartment, eventually, when my lease ended, and we made the obvious decision that took us entirely too long to make. And she was on the couch with her feet tucked under her and her water bottle on the coffee table, and I was reading something I can no longer remember, and the whole evening was completely ordinary. The same ordinary as before, except named properly. She had a new sticker on the water bottle, a yellow one, slightly less askew. She had put it there the week we officially moved in together, which she claimed was a coincidence, and which I did not for a moment believe. 2 years later, when people ask how we got together, she says, "I left him a note." They always want more. She always shrugs and says that's the whole story. It isn't. It's 3 years of living 2 rooms apart and a kitchen table and a lamp that made everything look warmer and 17 items on one bathroom shelf. But the note is the part that moved. I tell people that I had excellent filing instincts and terrible opening instincts, and that she solved the problem for me. She always says, "You drove across the city in 15 minutes. I always say 20. She always looks at me the way she did outside her building on a Wednesday evening, and I always feel something in my chest shift. Not dramatically, just enough. What would you have done if the person you lived with for 3 years left a note when they moved out, and the last line changed everything? And have you ever stayed quiet about someone for so long that the silence started to feel like its own kind of answer? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.